Hi, this is David Harper, Bionic Turtle. I wanted to take a look at a challenging learning objective that is in the Bruce Tuckman reading on bonds. And here the question is, what difference does maturity make on the return generated by a bond? Another way we can think about this is, who does better, an investor in a short-term bond or an investor in a long-term bond? To illustrate, I imagined a spot rate curve here in red. So for example, at 1.5 years or 18 months, the spot rate is about 5%. Recall, an important idea about the spot curve is that it contains within it all the information we need. It implicitly contains a forward rate curve. So I've plotted that in green. For example, at 18 months, the implied forward rate is about 7%. What that means here is that is the 6-month forward rate that starts in 1.5 years. So the spot rate curve gives us all the information we have about the forward rate curve, or implies a forward rate curve, and in many respects the implied forward rate curve is more important to us. So given that, we'll come down to and compare two bonds. And first, notice in green, I've copied the implied forward rate curve right here. So at 2 years, the implied forward rate is 9.24%. This is a steep forward rate curve. And the idea in Tuckman here is that if we have two investors, imagine the investor here in purple versus the investor in orange. The investor here represented by purple is going to be the short-term investor. Both will start with $10,000. The purple investor will be investing in a short-term 6-month bond and then rolling it over for the duration to end up here at the end of 2.5 years. So for example, $10,000 in 6 months is invested at the 3% rate. So 10,000 times 3% is 300, but it's only 6 months, so it's half of that. It's $150. There, the 10,000 grows to 10,150 in 6 months. Now this short-term investor then rolls that over at the implied forward rate of 5.025% and rolls it over and so on. If, as time goes forward, these forward rates are in fact realized, what I mean is, if we get here to 18 months, this short-term investor rolls over. If we happen to be so lucky that this forward rate that was implied at the start of the whole period happens to be the realized 6-month spot rate at that point in time, then this amount will be rolled over and become this amount. So if the forward rate becomes the realized spot rates, this investor will end up with $11,919. Now compare to the investor in orange, who is the long-term investor. This investor takes $10,000 and purchases a single bond here with a price of $100 and paying a coupon of 7%. And that bond is going to have a maturity of 2.5 years. And so that's why there's no interim numbers here. Instead, this investor has $10,000. They're going to receive a coupon at 6 months here of $350. That is the semi-annual coupon, which is half of 7% or 3.5% of the $10,000. And then going forward another year, this investor also receives another coupon of $350. But the first coupon gets reinvested at whatever the spot rate is, and we'll imagine it's the realized forward rate. So here, all we have down here looks like a lot, but it's just each coupon of $350, and then the coupon gets reinvested for the duration, and we end up here at the end of 2.5 years. And so this investor who purchased the long-term bond has a future value of a set of cash flows, one for each coupon that gets reinvested, and finally the return of the principal. And if we add all those up, this investor in the long-term bond, you'll notice, will have a future value of $11,919, which is the same as the short-term investor who rolled over at these implied forward rates. And so that is not by coincidence. That works out precisely because the short-term investor here, under these modeling assumptions, is rolling over at these forward rates, and these coupons are also being reinvested at these forward rates. And so the point is that first, an investment in a bond is equivalent to a series of forward loans at rates given by the forward rate curve, such that this short-term investor will do the same if they're able to roll over at these rates that were implied at the start of the period. However, let's just say that we go forward 6 months, and then this forward rate, the yield curve shifts, it often does, and this forward rate goes up to 9%. Now, the short-term investor is going to get to roll over at the higher realized spot rate. And so that is going to produce a higher terminal value for the short-term investor. Whereas the long-term investor, by purchasing the long-term bond, had effectively locked in this forward rate curve. So that can cut both ways. If this forward rate, the yield curve happens to shift down and the forward rate reduces, then the short-term investor has realized spot rates that are lower than originally anticipated by the forward rate curve, and he or she ends up with less money. So again, the key here is that the investor in the long-term bond is implicitly locking in the set of rates implied by the forward rate curve. So this is David Harper, the Bionic Turtle. Thanks for your time.